The journey began with the deceptive warmth of a California spring. Caleb, a university senior, and 4 of his closest friends, Liam, Tyler, Jax, and Elias, were packed into a salt-stained SUV heading toward the legendary Drift Festival in Santa Barbara. The air inside the car was thick with the scent of cheap energy drinks and the buzzing electricity of graduation week. As they navigated the winding Pacific Coast Highway, the orange glow of the setting sun flickered through the windows, creating a rhythmic strobing effect that felt hypnotic. But underneath the excitement, Caleb felt a strange prickle on the back of his neck. He couldn't shake the image of Vance, a social parasite they had all tried to distance themselves from. Vance wasn't just a nuisance, he was a person who treated personal boundaries like suggestions. He was loud, deeply insecure, and had a habit of appearing in rooms where he hadn't been invited, staring with eyes that seemed to be constantly recording data. The group's unease solidified into cold dread when they stopped at a desolate gas station 2 hours into the trip. While Tyler filled the tank, Caleb looked toward the vending machines and saw a figure standing perfectly still. It was Vance. He had no car, no luggage, and no reason to be there. Yet he fell into step with them as they walked back to the SUV, his silence more aggressive than any shout. The nightmare followed them to their beachside rental. Vance managed to infiltrate the house by lying to Caleb's sister, claiming he was a core part of the weekend plans. After a tense, whispered confrontation in the kitchen, Caleb finally forced him out. But Vance didn't leave the area. For the next 6 hours, he sat in a dark sedan parked across the street. Through the window, Caleb watched the blue light of Vance's phone illuminate his face from below, making him look like a carved mask. He was watching the house, waiting for the lights to go out, his presence a physical weight against the front door. The climax arrived at 3:45 a.m., a time when the world feels abandoned. Caleb was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of a crowbar snapping the lock on the sliding glass door. A sharp, metallic crack that echoed through the silent house. He didn't call out. He couldn't. His breath felt like ice in his lungs. Grabbing a heavy metal flashlight, he crept into the hallway, the floorboards groaning under his weight. He reached the mudroom and stopped. The closet door wasn't just closed, it was vibrating. He realized with a jolt of primal terror that someone was inside, leaning their weight against the wood, breathing in a jagged, rhythmic sync with the house itself. By the time the police arrived, the intruder had vanished through the broken door, but they found a long, serrated kitchen knife placed perfectly in the center of the closet floor. Vance was never caught, but the location-sharing app they had all used still pings Caleb's phone every year on the anniversary. If you've ever shared your GPS with a friend, take a look at the map tonight. Are you sure you're the only one tracking? In 1996, the highways of West Texas were less like roads and more like voids. Between the oil rigs and the endless desert scrub, there were stretches of pavement where the horizon felt like a threat. Silas, a young corporal on leave, was driving his friends, Marcus and Janie, toward Austin. The car felt like a tiny, fragile bubble of safety in an ocean of black. Spend a moment imagining the sound of the tires on the hot asphalt, a constant low-frequency hum that masked the silence of the desert. Out of that darkness, a pair of headlights appeared. They didn't pass. They hovered exactly 20 feet behind Silas's bumper, their glare filling the rearview mirror until Silas felt blinded. Then the strobe lights hit. They were red and blue, but they flickered with a strange, uneven mechanical rattle that didn't match any police vehicle Silas had ever seen. Silas pulled over onto the sandy shoulder, but his military training was already screaming. The man who stepped out of the SUV wasn't wearing a Stetson or a metallic badge. He was draped in heavy tactical gear with the word police printed in a font that looked slightly crooked, as if it had been ironed on in a basement. The man didn't approach the driver's window to ask for a license. Instead, he began a slow, predatory lap around the car. He touched the taillights, checked the tire pressure with his boot, and used a high-intensity spotlight to peer through the tinted glass of the back seat. He was looking for something specific, or perhaps he was looking for the absence of something. When he finally leaned into the window, he didn't smell like the law. He smelled like stale cigarettes and old copper. The man's voice was a low rasp as he asked Janie, "Is there anyone following you out here?" It was the question of a hunter checking for witnesses before a kill. The tension reached a breaking point when Silas reached into the glove box, flashed his military ID, and calmly informed the man that all 3 occupants were carrying service weapons. The man's expression went completely dead. His eyes became flat, vacant orbs. Without a word, he backed away, climbed into his unmarked SUV, and executed a violent U-turn across the dirt median, disappearing into the darkness. 2 days later, a news bulletin confirmed Silas's worst fears. A family of 4 had been found in a rest area 30 miles away. They had been pulled over by a fake officer and executed for the cash in their pockets. The officer was never identified, but the tire tracks at the crime scene matched the ones Silas saw in the desert sand. Julian was a man who defined himself by his self-reliance. When his truck's engine began to smoke on a humid back road in Arkansas, he didn't panic. He pulled over, popped the hood, and waited for the heat to dissipate. The air was thick with the suffocating buzz of cicadas and the smell of damp, rotting earth from the nearby woods. When a white pickup truck pulled over, Julian felt a surge of relief. But as the driver stepped out, Julian felt a cold shiver. The man looked like a haggard, weathered, and older version of Julian himself. The same build, the same beard, even the same tired set of the shoulders. It was like looking into a distorted mirror. The stranger claimed to be a local mechanic, offering a friendly hand, but his eyes were darting toward Julian's pockets with a hungry intensity. The trap was sprung the moment the stranger asked to borrow Julian's phone to call the shop. As soon as Julian handed over the unlocked device, the man's demeanor shifted from helpful neighbor to cold-blooded predator. He pulled a snub-nosed revolver and demanded not just Julian's wallet, but his phone passcode and his social security card. He left Julian stranded in the dust, but the true horror was the slow-motion crime that followed. Over the next 6 months, Julian watched from the sidelines of his own life as the stranger began to become him. The thief didn't just spend Julian's money. He visited Julian's doctors, applied for jobs in Julian's career field, and even reached out to distant relatives, learning the intimate details of a life he intended to steal. He wasn't just a robber. He was a parasite seeking a better host. Julian spent his life savings on a private investigator, eventually tracking his double to a nondescript diner in a small town in Tennessee. Julian didn't call the police immediately. He walked into the diner, sat in the booth directly behind the man, and whispered his own middle name into the back of the thief's head. The look of primal terror on the man's face was the only true justice Julian ever received. The thief fled the diner and led the police on a 30-mile high-speed chase that ended in a fatal, fiery collision. When the authorities searched the wreckage, they found a charred notebook. Inside, the thief had practiced Julian's signature thousands of times, alongside a list of Julian's childhood pets and mother's maiden name. The thief is buried in a nameless grave, but Julian still receives birthday cards from people he's never met. Once someone steals your name, is your life ever truly yours again? Stay alert, keep your doors locked, And never hand your phone to a stranger. Good night.